Gotta kill emotion, yeah. Life in the slums. My third eye open.
the last 10 minutes. So potentially seeing maybe something different. Spa is a little bit more straightforward, but of course strategies are going to be so up in the air. There's potential for that one-stop strategy, but also for that two-stop strategy. If drivers really do believe that that needs to be made, well, they're going to have to go for it. Remember, it's a 7 kilometer circuit, so um, it's a very, very long circuit. It's just within the FIA recommendations. So, of course, that 7 kilometers can very much make a difference between victory and defeat.
Yeah, that's the critical one here. Hopefully, we'll take a quick look at the Kyoto results then last time out, because in the end, the Kyoto results ended up falling in favour of the man that was fighting for the championship last time out, Jonathan Spiteri. Of course, he missed out alongside Ayrton Birmingham. He did not manage to get on the podium because of a great strategy call, actually, from the likes of Jonathan Spiteri. There's John Paul Vella alongside David Mifsud in the end getting third place. But it was a little bit of a mixed bag. If you take a look at the results as well beyond third place, the fact is Denzel Agius, Malia, Samut, Ayrton Birmingham all ended up sort of not really in the mix in the end of it, because of course their two-stop strategy is not really working at all, especially for Ayrton Birmingham. He's having in comparison to what he had last season out, not the best season at all.
Indeed, that kind of top seven is really one to be kind of looked into, and there's so many things to kind of talk about. We know how pacey Denzel Agius was. David Malia was very much in the potential for that win, but overall it did go to some of those drivers, and I think there was those last minute strategy calls really proved to be dividends. For a lot of our drivers. So they're kind of going to be the ones to look out for. But, we're about to go into the championship standing, the drivers' championship standing, and you'll see it's going to be very, very close. And there they are, Jonathan Spiteri leading by 7 points over Denzel Agius. That win from him takes him up to the top of the championship. Will he be able to continue with the momentum with John Paul Vella putting himself up into third place, 35 points? Then he goes 10 back to David Mifsud with Ayrton Birmingham just joined there on 25 points as well, with Daniel Malia there, 24. Chris Sammet, of course, not had the best run of results so far. Only 20 points he's accumulated over the course of 2 rounds. With Opa Joera, Clint Orland down there in P9 with Miss Spiteri, and then Joel Falzon de Bono on 4 points with Kassar, Grima, Paj, and Cine over the course of the 15 drivers that have taken part in the Asphalt Kings Championship this season. It's really closing up here, James. I don't know about you, but there's something that tells me amongst that top seven, it's never over until the checker flag falls.
Oh, absolutely. The Ayrton Birmingham, though, I think is probably the biggest shock out of all of them. He's nearly an entire race win now behind Jonathan Spiteri in the standings. He's 22 behind, 26, of course, for the race victory. And that could prove pretty critical in what is now actually a very shortening championship. Because, of course, we're at the Circuit des Francorchamps this time out. If we have a look at the calendar, and the Circuit de Sainte Croix is where we're going to be next week before we head over to the Red Bull Ring. Then we're taking a trip to the Deep Forest Raceway, Nürburgring, and then the Daytona International Speedway on the 11th of the 9th. Of course, that little break between the Circuit de Sainte Croix and the Red Bull Ring obviously going to pose as a nice little break, especially for the likes of Ayrton Birmingham. Before we go over there, we can have a look at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps graphic, because that is where we are at tonight for this particular Grand Prix on round number 3. Of course, it is one of the longest tracks pretty much across the entire field. Taking a trip, we're around the 20 turns around here. The quali lap times are going to be well into the 2 minutes, of course, but the expectation here for Gran Turismo 7 is that the strategies are going to be of the benefit of those that decide to go for a lower downforce setup, but of course you will shred your tyres.
Indeed, you will. There's so much strategy to play a part in terms of fuel, as you say, in terms of tire. They're really going to be the two main kind of components. Of course, you don't really have damage in Gran Turismo, so it's just about keeping it as fast as possible. This is one of the ultimate training grounds for drivers trying to get up to speed. It's not one of the most realistic simulators. It's not like iRacing. It's one of those where you can try and get up to speed. And then in order for yourself to be a fast racing driver, and this is going to be one of the circuits which I think is going to really determine the championship. This and Saint Croix, I think, really do become those really important rounds before we then set ourselves up for the second half of this championship.
should be in for an absolute blinder, of course, for the circuit to Spa-Francorchamps, because of course we are going to be, I think, pretty much looking specifically at the end of the main straight. I'm thinking also potentially the corner heading through Kuon may also leading into bus stop could potentially lead into some pretty intense racing. Logimont rather, I think actually is that corner, but nonetheless we should be in for an absolute blinder in just a few short moments time. Of course, a quick reminder of this setup of this particular one. Of course, it's a 15-minute qualifying before we go into the 50-minute race. There is one mandatory pit stop and 2 dry compound tyres must be used. Of course, if it is a dry circuit, this is the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. Typically, we may end up seeing some potential rain on the cards as well, so that could be one to watch. But we are going to be taking a short break before we get on for the qualifying in just a few short moments, so don't go away. Spa will be just around the corner. Velocity Esports Racing Asphalt Kings Championship brought to you by Hyundai, Intercomp, Monster Energy, Brand Garage, Level Academy and The Specialist. We are in for, no doubt, an absolute blinder. This is the last bit of practice, I believe, ahead of us here as the drivers are just getting themselves ready. It seems to be fairly dry out there, Adam, and hopefully it will remain that way because when it stays dry, usually it brings some pretty intense racing.
It does, even with these kind of dry conditions, it still can prove to be entertaining in no matter what category you're in. But we have seen some major weather in terms of other championships. Think about Formula One, the past weekend, as well as 2021 when it was completely rained out. What about that World Endurance Championship race a couple of years ago? Yeah, where they faced hail. Yes, hail at one stage during the race. So yeah, not in the most ideal situation for these drivers. Of course, what option would be available for the driver? Of course, wet, but yeah, not sure if hail would be one of those options. But anyway, qualifying is now about and is now underway here. So 15 minutes to get a lap time set. Drivers, get out there, set a lap time already. We've got one of our drivers getting a 3-second time penalty. That's not the most ideal start there.
No, not particularly ideal at that point as well. Obviously, we'll keep an eye out on what happens in this qualifying session. Of course, if you are new to the GT scene rather than you've come from the Formula scene, we are using what you would describe as the Formula 2 and Formula 3 pit stops, which is the one that goes down the hill towards Eau Rouge. So you will need to just bear in mind that the pit stops here are going to be considerably longer, going down all the way past what is the Formula 1 garages before going down towards the downhill second set of garages. So that will be one to watch. Here's Denzel Adjius, by the way, obviously taking the race victory last time out over in round number 1, because of course he took what was a comprehensive victory of pole and the race victory at Suzuka. Wasn't able to capitalise on a good pit stop later down the line, unfortunately, though. He ended up struggling a little bit in Kyoto, but he still managed to get the fastest lap, so he's got the pace in him.
Indeed he does, and I'm sure he won't be phased from what happened last week. Of course, it will be in his mind that he does sit a little bit back for the championship, but you know, it's a fresh start, it's a fresh circuit. You know, you're going into a circuit which you know so well, which is worldwide famous on on this circuit. We do have potential onboard lap coming with Dens, and I will take us through the 7 kilometers of Spa-Francorchamps in towards the bus stop chicane, trying to get the best slingshot out of the corner, and we now work our way and start the lap here at Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. Down in towards the source, you're going to be looking just straight towards you, just within your eye width, just past that 100-meter board. You'll brake, get the car rotated through that first corner before then carrying all the speed down. Remember, these GT3s are quite heavy. They don't have the same 1,000 horsepower that a lot of people are usually synonymise the circuit with. But now up through the famous Eau Rouge and in towards Radion. You're not lifting through this corner. You've just got to be aware of how much curvage you take through that final left-hander before entering the Kevel Straight, and you'll be topping out at about 160 miles an hour down this long straight. Now you're starting to look for the braking zone into Les Combes through the right-hander, trying to keep the car nice and steady, keep the balance on the car really just on the limit here as you turn your way through Malmedy. Now you're starting to head all the way down here towards Bruxelles and down into the hill. The braking is very difficult, but of course you're arriving at a little bit of a higher speed than you usually would on solid ground. Now you'll bring it back to the right before heading in towards Speaker's Corner. Down the hill you go towards Coulon, the double left-hander. You've got Mercedes there, Chris Sammer, Hedges following in behind. Now this is important because of course you're getting a little bit of a reference where you're gaining, where you're losing time. This one seems like he's gaining on Chris Sammer, so we know this lap could be faster than the Mercedes ahead. In towards the left Vanya chicane, keeping it to the right and keeping it to the left, very similar to the Les Combes chicane. He's trying to get all the track limits here, just keeping it within the track limits, but using as much of the road you possibly can. Now we're at the most southern part of the circuit, through Campus and in towards Stavelot, before we're heading through Coeur-Frère, and we head up the hill towards Blanchemont. You're heading uphill constantly through turn 17 and in towards turn 18. We're gaining on Chris Sammons as well. With the distinction we are just gaining on that to Mercedes, topping out once again at just 160 miles an hour. Now you're having a look and finding where that braking point is, just before the 100-meter board, in toward the right, in toward the left, through the bus stop chicaning. You release that acceleration over the timing beam, and it's going to be a 2 minutes 17.9 for Dentalatius here at Spa.
Yeah, Daniel beating him though straight away by just over 1/10 of a second in the Pennzoil GTR, so not a bad lap times coming in though. Oh wow, great lap as well actually from JS19. I believe that's Jonathan Spiteri, absolutely killing it in the McLaren by just over 4/10 of a second. So immediately showing the flexing the muscles of the McLaren at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. Sounded very familiar considering the last weekend out in Formula 1. But nonetheless, great effort indeed from the Maltese man. Looking around the board as well, Chris, we've also got Clint Orland as well in the 7th place. No expectations at all of him being slow, and he's always in the mix and could actually pose a little bit of a threat in that Ferrari-themed Porsche 911. And of course, Addix as well. That's it, at Birmingham, down in 6th place. And he's a man who is on a bit of a mission at the moment. He's got to try and find a bit of a rhythm in this championship if he's got any hope in retaining his crown.
Holland, massive Lewis Hamilton fan. We can see I think he drove one of his old Mercedes cars, I think maybe from the last 3 years, but of course now changed that to the scarlet red of the Scuderia. So Clint Orland running with a brilliant livery, but this one from the BMW of IATA Birmingham. Wonder where he's got the inspiration from this one. Of course, if you are aware in the motorsport community, you know this is a mock-up of Rexy, the AO Racing American-based team. Of course, actually, I believe it's Roxy. My apologies on that one. The pink car, usually the green car is Rexy, the male, but Roxy, the female version. And it looks like this is the livery that IATA Birmingham is running. It is an absolutely stunning livery as well. And really pops out on the road as he looks to climb up the hill, currently sitting in 6th, currently on that 3rd row of the grid. But James, I don't expect him to be there by the end of this qualifying session. I don't know about you.
Yeah, Yeah, no, it should be a little bit higher. He was already up around about 0.2 of a second in the third sector. So we'll see what his fourth sector split is like when he comes now across the final couple of corners of what is the old bus stop chicane, now just known as the chicane, as Martin Brundle is determined for it to be named as. Here he comes there, Etan Birmingham going down to the top three. Managed to find a good chunk of time on that one with a 2:17.787. So not a bad effort indeed from him. Making one note, although Jonathan Spiteri has decided to dive straight into the pit lane. So he's now coming straight back out. He's on an out lap, is the McLaren. So looks like he just wants to keep lap times coming in at his own pace, to be honest with you. Just look at this. It just goes to show how long this pit lane is in the GT3s, Adam. When it comes to strategy, that is going to be so critical because the pit stop being so long, you come in at the right at the end of the bus stop chicane and you've got to navigate all the way down the F1 paddock and then of course go through onto this set, the F2 and the F3 paddock as it's known in the Formula Racing, but of course the GT cars utilise this area because there's a lot more space.
Indeed, because of course when you get to something like the 24 hours of Spa, you're usually seeing about what was it this year? It was about 50 cars plus, maybe even over 60. I might have to delve into that in just a moment because yeah, it was just, I think it was a record-breaking number as well, which kind of shows you how big these Spa 24 hours, and they had to utilize every single pit box in order to be able to fit all these cars in as well. So you can just see there now, Jonathan Spiteri sitting at the front of the field, sitting second, sitting at the top of the championship standing. So he is in a man that is in quite the form here. A second and a first, 2 podiums to his name. Can he continue on this great form here, James?
Underestimated, by the way, 75 cars took part in the 2025 circuit Display Francorchamps 24 hours. So it was actually pretty intense 24-hour event, also very intense as well in the esports variation, but we won't talk about that one. Chris Sammer just coming through now the chicane. He will now enter to the final corner of turn number 19 and want to start his lap. So this is going to be the critical one here now, I think, for a lot of people. In fact, Chris just entering the pit lane. So Dave Potts is who we're going to be watching, who's also entering the pit lane, would you believe? So why don't we take a trip up, if you don't mind, Mr. Director, to Jonathan Spiteri up in first place, because, of course, he will be just about starting his lap, I would believe. In fact, he is just heading, looks like, through the Curve Paul Frere at the moment. So he'll be heading towards Blanchimont to get going with his lap. Now, the question is has he got a little bit more time in him than the lap time that he last set? Of course, his fastest lap time at 2:08.505, then a 2:17.304 being the lap time that, of course, that is on the purple marker. So, question for you on this one then, Adam. So, will he be able to improve now? He's got a bit more of a clear run because, of course, the majority of the drivers now in the pit lane, so opportunity knocks.
It's going to be a tough margin, you know. That lap of the 2:17.304 was a very, very tough time to beat. I don't think he'll beat it initially, but he will get kind of close, especially with that. Yeah, and especially through La Source, you don't want to be doing that either. So I think it'll probably be maybe a 1:18. But remember, these are endurance tyres; they're a bit harder compounds compared to the likes of Formula One. They don't build up the heat as easily. He is going to get a little bit of a toe, but yeah, he's going to have to try and avoid both cars here. So he's going to duck into the section. Oh, gets a bit blocked there. I'm not sure about that one. I think this is going to be a back-off lap here for Jonathan Spiteri, and he does look like he was carrying a little bit less downforce on that race car. So yeah, the McLaren having to back off on this one because that looks more wiggly than a fishtail.
And unfortunately, Ayrton Birmingham, the recipient then on that situation, getting a bit of a tow from another car who was also on an outlap but not paying attention to behind him. And I think Jonathan Spiteri's lap is pretty much over and done with. I still think he's actually powering around the corner. It was only 79 thousandths down as he finished his first sector split going through Lacoon, but through Malmedy, he looked to be a little bit uncomfortable on the rear tyres, to be honest with you. It looks like he's gone for the lower downforce setup, so he's prioritising the main straights. Denzel Agius into the pit lane, fresh tyres, as is Daniel as well. So this is where we're going to start to see now. Will the car be of any improvement as he's chucking the car through the left-hander? He's going to get a little bit of dirty air, potentially going through Campus and cover Paul Frere, but I wouldn't expect anything extraordinary. Second sector split looking well off the pace, to be perfectly honest with you, and I think that is just down to the fact he did not get a clean run on this one. And curiously, by the way, as well, Adam, this could be a pose of a bit of a critical one here for the race. The slowdown penalty taking place straight after Paul Frere, and that just a little bit of a lift through there, and your penalty is not just being served at the point of you serving it, but also all the way down the straight through Blanchimont and then through into the chicane, because of course you're losing all that speed.
It's exactly what you mentioned there, James, because of course with this kind of, with these penalty lines, the main point is to really just destroy their momentum. Well, kind of not destroy them, but take it back a little bit. You know, take it a step back or two. So you drive. My goodness me, that was I had some Birmingham getting a bit wiggly, but yeah, these are kind of momentum stoppers here. You want to be losing momentum through those kind of penalty lines. That's exactly what Gran Turismo has set out to do, and they put it at a very crucial point. You know, it would be a little bit dangerous to kind of put it towards Rouge and Radion, just because, you know, how much momentum you can get through that sequence of corners, and then of course it's a blind uphill where if you do have that slowdown you won't be able to see. So, you know, I think it's a very, very fair point of the circuit. And just continuing with Ayrton Birmingham still sitting in 5th place here, still sitting on that 3rd row of the grid. Will he be able to put himself into the top 2 rows, I wonder, because there's still a little bit of time left, but yeah, we're starting to come to the end of it now.
On board then with the championship defender in Ayrton Birmingham. As I said though, I think this is worth a quick conversation as we're just about to eclipse 13 and a bit minutes in this qualifying session. Ayrton really not having the best of seasons this season as well, so what has he got to do in order to find his momentum and get him back on track?
I think it's going to be about points. This might be a circuit where he just thinks, yeah, this is not for me, let's just get some points. So that's kind of where Ayrton Birmingham has to kind of focus on. You think about all the kind of races that he's done previously. I've covered him on Formula 1 as well, back in, I think it was F1 23. So yeah, definitely is one to keep an eye out for. But, you know, he had that ability to bounce back with him. He does have that ability to really push on, but yeah, overall I think that he's just got to keep himself on the tarmac, get those points, and I think maybe even an open strategy. If he does see a different way to take his strategy, I think there'll definitely be places where he can do that. But let's have a look at this lap toward the line, because he's only got a few minutes left. This is where the improvements are coming from. It's only, well, 8/10 of a second, but he will be able to get one more lap in here. It's not like iRacing where as soon as it hits 50 you all get reset back to the grid. So these are the last laps here, James, and we are absolutely in for a cracker.
Yeah, checkered flag now waving, so this is where we're going to start to see the best laps coming in. Denzel Agius, best first sector so far, but not the best of everyone so far. Managed to find 83 thousandths of a second as he's now just heading through Malmedy. Heading through then to Bruxelles, however you want to pronounce it. Down here, this is going to be a critical corner as well, and depending on your setup could pose as a bit of a threat, because if you end up sort of track extending through there and going a bit wide, it actually ruins your lap. Going through No Name, and this is where Denzel Agius now will be wanting to be at his absolute peak. A great camera angle of that livery as well, gorgeous livery car as well on that Lexus. I think he's the only person to be racing with a Lexus in this championship as well, so Toyota at least getting some kind of a showing in their smart brand, their smart, more upmarket brand in their Lexus. Chucking the car through the right-hander. We'll see if there's going to be any improvement in the second sector split coming up in just a few short moments' time. Denzel Adjius looking to try and find a bit more pace, getting a little bit of a tow as well, giving a little bit of a tow rather to Daniel, just tucked in behind him. Here comes Denzel then, second sector split. He's down 59 thousandths of a second in the second sector. So again, not really finding the pace, and at the moment, not really finding the pace at all versus Jonathan Spiteri, who was absolutely flying high with that lap time that he set of a 2:17.181. We'll see what Denzel does though in this final sector. He'll be hoping that he's got all the power in the world, the Toyota power unit powering him down towards the final corner, the chicane. He'll want to try and mount this curb here, and very nicely taken. Try not to lose the rear upon exit as he powers out of the corner. Very well taken from Denzel. Here he comes then across the line. He does not improve, and if anything is beaten straight away by Daniel. Look at that, over 1.5 tenths of a second. Jonathan Spiteri, please, can we get on board with him to see where he is? Is there going to be any improvements from him, I wonder? It will not be. 2:17.181 is going to be the maximum time, and that will be it. And in the end, a very well crafted lap from Daniel in the end to secure pole position by just a little bit over a tenth of a second with a 2:17.037.
Wow, that is a superb lap. First pole position there for Daniel Malia, with Jonathan Spiteri will be joining him on the front row of the grid. Just less than a tenth and a half between the two. Then we find John Paul Vella, who has managed to throw that McLaren up to P3. Wow, the McLarens do look very strong. Denzel Adjius will be on that second row with looks like it's going to be David Mifsud in P5 with Clint Orland and then Joel Valzon de Bono. Someone I didn't expect on the fourth row of the grid, Ayrton Birmingham. Struggled on that lap before he went on to his final lap. Really kind of took the biscuit on that one. But fourth row, I think he's just about building on and trying to get points here for our fellow Brit. Then of course I think ninth is going to be Owen Kassar, and I believe I don't see down here Christian Sammons. So yeah, very very interesting to see how that's going to go. There you go, Christian Sammons and Owen Kassar are your final two. But that was a really, really interesting qualifying session. You know, that kind of shows a little bit of pace about the drivers. Denzel Adjius is, again, not the best in qualifying, but let's see how he does in the race, because there's so many opportunities for him to be able to make it up. Those two McLarens look really, really strong. I've been mightily impressed with how they've run, and it could definitely come into good. But yeah, I also want to say a big thank you to the collaborators: Hyundai, Intercomp, Monsters Energy, Brand Garage, and Level Academy, and the specialists. A big thank you to all of those for staying with us here at Velocity Esports Racing.
Yeah, critical one. That was Ayrton Birmingham as well. 3/4 of a second down. Absolutely bonkers for the championship hopeful. We'll take a short break and then we're getting on with the race. Don't go away. The history makers at the circuit that offers probably the most history alongside other circuits, maybe like Monaco. I would like to put your bets on Denzel Adjius potentially being up there. His race pace is usually up there, but nonetheless, what a performance in the end from the man of the moment, Daniel Malia. He leads from the front. Questions for anyone around here. Who is going to be the favourite for this one? All we do know is that the cars are getting ready and raring to go, as they are going to be lining their way down the main straight, and we're going to be getting on with what will no doubt be some serious, intense racing ahead of us. They come across the start finishing line right now, and no more waiting. Let's go racing. Daniel Malia leading the way, but he's going to be giving a lovely tow for certain to Jonathan Spiteri, the man who thought he had pole position for a good chunk of this qualifier. Is he going to be able to get the move done? I tell you what, he's had a really good run up Eau Rouge into Radion. Is he going to look for the move? He's going to have to go around the outside, because that's certainly taken up by Malia. He goes around the outside. They go side by side, heading towards Lacombe. Who's going to have the advantage going into this one? Malia squeezing him to the outside, and Jonathan Spiteri will have to yield up on the curb, and it looks like he's going to get a little bit of attack potentially from the Marlboro branded of John Paul Vella, who looks for the move to potentially he's going to have to go around down the inside of Brookside, but in the end, no move taken on there. Jonathan Spiteri can't get that move done. Daniel Malia still leading the way.
Denzel Agius didn't get the best of starts either. He's dropped a place to David Mifsud as well. So now he's looking for a move here on the Marlboro McLaren. So I think a poor exit there from Jean-Paul Vella, who maybe got a little bit tucked up too much behind the rear of Jonathan Spiteri, and that has allowed the Porsche through. Does the Porsche have the pace around here? We know how well that can go around here, especially if you set it up correctly, drive it correctly. Then I think Mifsud is in a fantastic place to be able to take a second place here by the end of the first lap. Down in towards the right-hander here of Campus and on towards Stavolo. This is a superb run here from Mifsud, and he's almost pushing the McLaren up instantly here. There's still a long way to go left in this race, but he's going to have to make the move now if he really wants to stamp his authority on a potential win, even a podium for sure.
He's absolutely filled to the rafters with fuel as well, so I'm wondering what tyre he's got on, because if it's a soft tyre, he might not even need to refuel if he's doing for a double soft stint. I don't know, we'll have to see. Anyway, chucking the car through the right-hander. Mistake from Jonathan Spiteri, and that is a very uncharacteristic mistake. It's not just going to be one, it will be two positions that he loses. He's now down to fourth. Off of the track, though, was Misford, so would the move be classified as legal? I don't know, but he's given the position back to to John Paul Vella in the end. So now, Dave Potson is going to be really, really close, up close and personal, these drivers at the moment. Denzel Agius now down in sixth place. Here's Clint Orland trying to get close to Jonathan Spiteri. Jonathan Spiteri, what an appalling start. It looked like he was getting up close and personal to potentially take the lead of this race. As it stands, he's now off the podium.
Indeed, and now Clint Orland is going to look to go past the second of the Porsches. We now look at driver eye view with Clint Orland. Is going to be able to make that move. Well, it's going to have to be very, very aggressive. There goes the defensive shape there from Jonathan Spiteri, and he says, well, I'm going to float it around the outside. Does he have the space to work with on that left-hander? He does, and he's going to use the muscle of the Porsche. My word, that was a squeeze and a half, and look at Denzel Agius. He is smelling the exhaust fume of... Now it's Jonathan Spiteri, the two championship rivals, battling away here for fifth place on the road. Not something we expected in these early stages of Spa, but this could be crucial for the championship. And I wonder if they battle too much, could they just start dragging each other further down? Because then next on the championship hit list is John Paul Vella. And where is he? Oh yeah, he's in a podium place.
David Mifsud, by the way, managing to get the move done on John Paul Vella. It looked like he gave the position back up after track extending at the chicane, but then he's immediately taken the position right back out of hands of John Paul Vella, who's now chasing down Daniel at the moment, Daniel Malia. So we'll be looking to try and get that one done as quick as he possibly can, because he's looking particularly racy out there at the moment in the 911. Of course, this is a circuit that is actually ran by the Porsche Super Cup, so the Porsches are attuned and acclimatized to this particular track. So expectation surely is that the 911s and the McLarens are going to be really racing away with it. But I tell you what, the Nissan GTR absolutely flying at the helm of Daniel Malia. Fantastic from him so far.
Indeed, and that has been really proving critical. How fast is that Nissan? How far can it go in the hands of Daniel Malia? And this has been a very, very good start to his race. I think he's definitely going to be putting himself in a spot of confidence, because now that he's got that lead race experience, he's just going to continue on his way, just keep lapping away. But that Porsche is just continues to getting so strong. That of course David Mifsford is definitely really starting to close on him just that little bit further every single time. Remember, he's got a long time before we call the end of this race here, so I think there's going to be moves about the place, and Christian Salmon, who started down in 9th place, is really going to have to now start to make his push through the field, because yeah, he's losing a little bit of fuel at this moment in time. Completely fresh tyres for everyone. Let's see how the strategy just starts at this moment in time. Purple sector for the Mercedes.
Yeah, absolutely flying at the moment, Chris Samet, as he's just trying to find the rhythm. But I'll tell you what, who else is flying at the moment, actually flying faster than the front runners at the moment, actually, would you believe, is actually the efforts of Ilmore Owen Kassar, who he's just absolutely flying out there at the moment. And would you believe also in a Mercedes, I believe, as well, isn't he? So is it Mercedes? Correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, no, it's the Toyota Supra he's racing with at the moment. So will he be able to get alongside Christian Samet going through here then? It'll be very tightly compacted. But you know what? Chris Samet left as much space as he possibly could, despite the fact that Owen Kassar was looking for it. But the gap's simply not there for the Supra.
Indeed, he just wasn't quite able to get into the space there where he was able to just squeeze on by. But the Toyota really looking pretty strong here. A new car as well to the Gran Turismo 7C in terms of this event. But of course, yeah, I don't think it's the usual car that is run by Mamre. I think that, or Joseph Page, I should say. I think he's usually in a Honda. So that's kind of what I've got on my little spreadsheet. But yeah, he's pushing on, see if we can test this new car out and see how well it can go. Decent pace so far as well, but he's just got to hold on for his position before a gap potentially opens up behind the AMG.
So if you're wondering what's happened as well to our championship man, we're going very wide actually, coming out of Blanchemont at the moment. The man who was winning the championship last time out, now down in 10th place of 10. Oh, he's going really wide. What is going on at the moment with the man who is meant to be the favourite for this championship? He's now got to serve a half-a-second penalty at the cut-off point, which just comes out of Paul Frere. He is really not comfortable out there at the moment. Now, I'm wondering if the reason why he's so far back from 9th place is because he's made an early pit stop, but if he hasn't, this has been an appalling start from Ayrton Birmingham.
No, it can't be a pit stop. I think he's made a mistake. Look at the fuel. Look at the fuel. Look at the tires. He would have topped it up if that is the case. And you won't be falling. 8 seconds behind 9th place if you've come into the pits. It would be a even bigger margin. So that is a clear mistake being made by Ayrton Birmingham, and this is just going from bad to worse for the Briton as he looks to try and push on here and see what he can reclaim. Because remember, there's going to be no safety cars. There's going to be, none of that full course yellow, none of that virtual safety car, nothing. What do you get in endurance racing or single-seater racing? It is just down to pure green flag racing, and it will all be down to really, does he have the pace entirely, or can maybe strategy play a bit of a part? But with that half-a-second penalty, that's going to ruin everything.
P3, please, Mr. Director. Clint Orland. What is going on with this man all of a sudden? Oh, look at Denzel Agios going for the dive bomb. Looking potentially on Jonathan Spiteri, who's just started to find a little bit of a rhythm in the McLaren. But I'm keeping an eye on Clint Orland. This is a really tight little battle at the moment for P3 between Clint Orland, John-Paul Vella, Jonathan Spiteri and Denzel Agios. Down in P3 to P6. So the 911 now leading the way, but the McLaren of John-Paul Vella is going to have a lovely tow heading towards Blanchemont and then the chicane. Could he go for the dive potentially into the bus stop chicane, I wonder? Chucks the car through the left-hander. A bucket load of understeer for that McLaren. Clearly a more of a lower downforce setup, but the 911's got so much power against him. Jonathan Spiteri not looking for the move, nor is Denzel Agios, so they hold station as they go towards the start-finishing line on the Formula track. Of course, the start-finishing line happening after La Source in the GT racing, so keep an eye on that one and don't get caught out. In fact, there is the checker flag there, actually, so yeah, it will be at that particular straight, but nonetheless, Denzel Agios looking a little bit spicy now against Jonathan Spiteri, but John-Paul Vella keeping honours even with Clint Orland.
Indeed, it's keeping in close company there between the two cars. I think Jean-Paul Vella would definitely want to keep his podium potential going because, of course, you know, he's got that podium last time around. He's on a superb run of form,
Surely.
and even then he finished fifth in that opening race here. But let's have a look. Round the outside he goes, and with that purple sector, he's just got a slot in behind there, so it's still kind of Malia versus Mifsud, and I think this is great for the championship. Let me hold back on that one because Jean-Paul Vella is now having a look at a move here down into Bruxelles, having to force the outside line. Orland is doing, and you know, look at that in behind. I think Jonathan Spiteri and Denzel Adji just looking at this thinking, well, we're just getting held up here. We are just becoming road bollards to the rest of them behind. So there's big potential for these drivers to kind of fall back even further if they can't get past that McLaren. The white and red Marlboro McLaren, they're going to be in a little bit of trouble here in terms of strategy.
In the 7 and a bit years that I've done commentary, a Bruxelles. That is the way you pronounce it. Right, I'll document that one in my own mind. Jonathan Spiteri now, still holding on in P5. Now, just found a little bit of a rhythm now with these four drivers, which is pretty good. But, of course, it's the final podium position. They're not really gaining on the likes, at the moment, of David Misford, who's just managing his own pace alongside the Daniel Malia at the moment, them two in their own little battle here. And I tell you what, battle between the GTR and the 911 is actually usually a pretty good race. So the question is Malia going to be able to hold on from the pressure of David Misford, of course, off of the back of what was a really unfortunate set of events at Suzuka, which saw him miss out on a podium as a result of running out of fuel, gained it back in a great performance last time out in Kyoto. Will he be able to carry it, though, into the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps? Going into La Source, no pressure at the moment, but getting ultimately a bit closer, but a bit of a wiggle, though, going through La Source.
Indeed, and still just trying to plant the power down. It was closer than we last looked at. Last time I remember, it was about 1.2 seconds. So managing to close that edge little by little, but it does just show the advantages that you are trying to go with. And that was a bit of a wiggle there through the Rouge on Radio. So it seems like Mifsud is just trying to push on. I'm just saying before we cut to the other battle. Now, I think this is great for the championship. You know, we've seen two different winners in two different races. We're on for a third different winner in 3 different races. And if we do get these guys all on the podium, well, that will mean that we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different podium sitters in 3 races. I think that just showed the competitive nature of the championship, which is exactly what we look for in the Asphalt King series. I love unpredictable championships. You know, why do you think I was at why do you think I was at Formula E last weekend? So of course, these are exactly what you want. To look at that, a mistake there from Malia as well. And this now see the 911 wanting to gain up to the back of that Nissan. And will we see the opportunity coming very, very soon?
Jean-Paul Vella down in P8. He's sort of struggling a little bit here, and I'm wondering what's happened with the man down in P8 at the moment, because he was in a really tight little battle at one point, but now he's losing a bunch of pace alongside those, as we've also now got none other than Owen Kassar getting in this little battle now in this Toyota Supra. Back towards the front, though, Dave Potts and Daniel Malia. Yes, Malia starting to feel the pressure a little bit from the 911. And great points, actually, from the director, who's saying he's noticing that the Porsche 911 is struggling a little bit on the straights, but he's great in the second sector. So is that because he's gone for a higher downforce setup, actually, unlike everyone else around him? Well, this is where we'll start to see that potential theory come into line here, because this is where the lower downforce setup, of course, will massively benefit. Coming across the line, 2:19.637, nowhere near his fastest laps, but he's definitely getting much closer to the GTR. So we'll see. Coming out of La Source, this is where now the GTR should be at its absolute prime. We'll start to see it pull away, despite the fact he's going to be giving a little bit of a tow to Dave Potts. That's David Mifsud. Here he comes then up a Rouge and then into Radion, where we would expect, surely, the GTR is going to have a little bit more in terms of pace, and it certainly looks that way.
Indeed, and he's just about to go to halfway distance in terms of fuel, so it does seem like you can manage about 14 laps in terms of fuel purple sector there for Daniel Malia, and Malia continues to push on. So you're looking around the 30-minute mark where it will go empty. That means you have 20 minutes remaining. So it's a real kind of tough window if you do want to make this one-stop strategy work. And look at the tires; they're not really doing too much. You know, they're on a good set of tires at this moment in time. They've got some good health in them, and that kind of gives us a little bit of a story in terms of strategy only 15 minutes into this race. So I think it's definitely between these two. If somebody does want to go for that two-stop strategy, I think you've got to make your stop probably this lap, and go for the faster tires, and then try and maybe make another one with about 10-15 minutes to go. So you may be having to split it between 15 minute stints if you do want to try that two-stop strategy. But overall, I think you've just got to go for that one stop, which is something I wasn't quite expecting when we went onto the broadcast tonight.
Must admit, I've just noticed something as well. That is actually the tyres. Because you were speaking of tyres, and I was just making a document on this one. The tyres on Mifsford's car are significantly worse than Malia's, which is probably due to the fact that he was in that dirty air for such a long time that actually Malia is actually in a better position when it comes to strategy, which probably means Potse has probably got to make some serious inroads pretty quickly here, and then consider, am I going to have to pit a bit earlier here? And if that's the case, I'm going to have to fuel a little bit more, which will obviously only put more stress into these endurance tyres. So going through into La Source, you can see Potsy's definitely on the verge, on the limit rather, on that 911, which is allowing Malia to just edge his way out of the main straights and going through La Source, up Arouge, and then into Radion. So that is going to be actually one to keep an eye out on. I'm also going to be very interested, as it doesn't look like an overtake is going to happen here, on the battle with Denzel Agius, because I'd like to go to P5 for a second. Now, this is the battle that has been really brewing between 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th in this battle. And I tell you what, John Paul Vella's falling off quite considerably. On board with Clint Orland, still following the battle with Jonathan Spiteri. Denzel Agius always breathing down the neck and actually setting a purple first sector of anyone so far. So fastest of anyone so far for Denzel Agius. The Lexus is in and around the ballpark, but Chris Sammer just putting a little bit of a cushion between him and the Lexus, which is therefore going to allow potentially, I'm thinking Owen Cassard and John Paul Vella to potentially consider maybe I need to get this move done on the Mercedes quickly if I want to get in that battle for P3.
Indeed, I do think that there will still be a couple of potentials, and I've just by what you've just seen there, the half a second penalty there for John Paul Vella. That's going to put him behind Fulton de Bournois. So I do think that that is another thorn to the side for the McLaren driver there. Meanwhile, just looking a little bit further up, we're seeing Sam just sitting in 6th there. Denzel Agius now closing back onto Jonathan Spiteri. So Spiteri will have another round of mirror full of Lexus as he powered their way now up from the bottom of the hill and all the way up towards Blanchimont. We will go, and that's a car of Denzel Agius that will just continue to hassle and hound Spiteri, just trying to more think about the strategy, because I think we're still a while away from the strategy, but I do think the pit stops will come in very, very soon. It just kind of depends who wants to go quite aggressive or who wants to go quite passive. But yeah, that half an hour mark will definitely be the decider, bearing in mind we'll have about 20 minutes remaining. I think nobody is going for a two-stop strategy. And even if they have to, it will be a pit stop within the last 5 minutes, which you won't want to make at all.
Would like to go on board very briefly with Denzel Agius, because I'm interested in what his fast lap was, his last lap rather, with a 1:19.362. So despite the purple first sector, he's still about 6/10 down on Potsy's fastest lap, but that may be just as a detriment to the fact that, of course, the tyres are starting to wear out a little bit. That front right looking a little bit worse for wear, but again, we are now approaching 20 minutes into this race. This one-stop strategy going to occur probably around about the 30-minute mark, as you rightfully point out, Adam. Is he going to get any closer to Jonathan Spiteri? Is Denzel Agius? Well, he's getting closer on the straights. He's certainly looking very powerful indeed with that Toyota power unit on the front of the Lexus. Is he going to get any closer? Is he going to go for the dive, potentially going into Bruxelles? No move on that particular occasion, but Denzel Agius certainly looking very racy indeed. Let's go on board with Clint Orland for just a second as well, because he's, of course, leading this little train of 3 cars with that final podium position in mind, and he's been managing pretty well, but his fuel levels looking a little bit less than everyone else's. Is there going to be potentially a little bit of a fuel saving opportunity now for the 911 in order to try and make it to his pit stop window?
I don't think he's going to want to do that here, James, because that just kind of spelled out disaster for him. But what we do know is that it'll be a very, very long wait in that pit box, which is not something you want to do. But will it give it the ability to push to the end? Because I think that is the main question we might have to be asking ourselves. Remember, the exact halfway point is on the 25-minute mark, so it will be intriguing to see how that kind of all pans out. Look at Denzel Agius there in the background. He is absolutely pushing on here. See if he can potentially find a gap here on Jonathan Spiteri, but I think had to slow himself a little bit through the left-hander of Francorchamps. In towards 19, in towards 20 we go with the Lexus, trying different lines, trying to off-put the McLaren in front of him, but I think Spiteri is doing a fantastic job of just hanging on. Look at the consistent laps there of Denzel Agius. A little bit out compared to others. You know, he did a 2-minute 20.7. But also went what was that, 1.3 seconds faster a couple of laps later. So you know, the consistency is not exact there, but it's still within range. So I think still doing a really, really good time. Meanwhile, look at this consistency from Jonathan Spiteri, continuing to keep fast, keeping in the 119 since lap 6 as well. So I think he's got a little bit of an upper hand here, and I think that Clint Orland is going to be feeling a lot of pressure once he heads onto this next time around.
Purple first sector as well from Jonathan Spiteri, who's starting his push now to try and break away from Denzel Agius and potentially put a little bit of pressure on Clint Orland, going a little bit wider actually out of Malmedy. So he's obviously really at the absolute limit of his car at the moment. While this is all happening, by the way, that 0.5 second pause on the accelerator for Jean-Paul Vella has led, as you rightfully pointed out and rightfully predicted there, Adam, that Joel Falzon Del Bono is now in front of the JP Treble 05. And what's happened to the McLaren? Because it's not like his fuel is any lower. It's not like his tyres are any lower. It's just suddenly his pace has fallen off a cliff.
Yeah, that's no idea what's going to happen there. We saw how good it was in qualifying. Penalty there as well for Owen Cassar, so he's not going to be in the greatest place at this moment in time, as the Toyota Supra is about to slow up here, so we'll definitely get overtaken by De Bono. Not sure about Jean-Paul Vella. I think Jean-Paul Vella will have to be on a real push here and maybe have to do a little bit of a send up the inside if things all go to plan. Slam on the brakes there. It allows space there for De Bono to go on through. What about Jean-Paul Vella? He's going to be right on the rear of that Toyota Supra. Tried that outside line, trying to push on, but yeah, I think it's going to have to be a bit of a send in towards the bus stop chicane, which he's going to have a look at doing. His nose is there, but opts to back out of that one because it looks like De Bono was, sorry, not De Bono, Cassar was saying, yeah, none of that, and he's, in fact, he's doubled down on that because he's coming into the pit lane.
He's coming into the pit lane with just a little bit over half of this race still to go. Of course, 23.5 minutes in this race. 50 minutes is the limit, of course, with the final lap being at the point of them being on it. So the question is, what will happen now for Owen Cassar? Because that Toyota Supra was looking fairly sharp in the middle of that first stint. So people will be keeping a firm eye on this one. While this is all happening, by the way, Jonathan Spiteri now within touching distance of Clint Orland. So this is where this battle for P3 is now starting to really hotten up. Jonathan Spiteri's last couple of laps, actually, were very consistent to within 1,000 thousandth of a second of each other, and that again a testament to the efforts of JS19. He is looking to potentially put Clint Orland under pressure, and Clint Orland is really starting to struggle here, and I'm wondering now if the fuel saving measure is now starting to become a factor.
Yeah, I definitely think it's having to become a factor for him, but look at that little battle for the lead. That's completely separated, with Orland also now falling into the clutches of Jonathan Spiteri. I think maybe he got maybe a bit too excited potentially, but what we do know is that he's going to have to completely fill up on this one. So it will be interesting to see what tyres he decides to go on, because of course he might go for a slightly faster set of tyres, but by the time we get round to that 45-minute mark, the tyres might be absolutely finished and he might be having to fend off from these guys once again. So I think if he does come into the pits early, I think that would be a good option for him. I think Orland would just need to keep himself aware of what's going on on his surroundings, and not just focus on his race. He needs to be looking at the bigger picture in this case. So yeah, just thinking behind, Denz is probably going to get a little bit frustrated as well, seeing his championship rival just sitting in front of him, potentially trying to overtake a place here, and Clint Orland's going to go defensive, try the long way round, and that's not going to work on this case. And Den will be looking at it like, I just want to get through here, lads. I want to go and challenge this McLaren. I want to go for a podium here, but he's got to bide his time. I think the experience is really going to pay off here for Denzel Agius if the strategy does go to plan. And yes, that is a very, very tough moment there, with Spiteri getting right up to the rear bumper of Clint Orland.
Tiny little bit of lifting and coasting, I think, is happening on Clint Orland's car. That's why Jonathan Spiteri, to be honest with you, didn't brake any later than he usually would do. It's just Clint Orland's having to save a little bit of fuel at the moment, because he's down at least a couple of laps, actually, in comparison to Spiteri. But Spiteri has got the toe and he's got the pace. He's going to have to go down the outside line of Lacombe, but he might not even need to worry about Lacombe, because the move is going to be done. He's going for the late break. And there, Denzel Agius potentially might put a little bit of a battle on Clint Orland, but Jonathan Spiteri now back up to P3 in an effort that is only can be described as almost heroic, going around the outside, and Clint Orland trying his best to launch an attack going through Lacombe, but in the end, going through Malmedy, that defensive move was just never going to be on, and he's going to have to concede the position, and that's exactly what he's done. Now down to P4, Denzel Agius has got blood in his eyes. I think he's trying to get in there and potentially launching a bit of an attack. I don't think Clint Orland's going to look for it going through that particular corner, but I tell you what, a little bit wide though, Jonathan Spiteri. He need to do that one, and Clint Orland is going to get the move done and dusted. Denzel Agius potentially around the outside as well. It's going to be a late breaker around the outside line from the Lexus, and they're going to hit, and they're going to go off the track, I think, but then they're going to hold off there, and they're still going side by side as they head through into campus. Surely the move for Jonathan Spiteri means that that move is going to be held, but there will be a little bit of controversy between the pair of them.
There will be. That's going to be something to keep an eye on. Not entirely sure what caused Jonathan Spiteri to kind of veer into the door of Denzel Agius. I think he will feel a little bit aggrieved in that one, but I think for Spiteri it was just a snap of oversteer. He was into the corner, just a slight tap, maybe just a slight tank slapper, went into the door there of Denzel Agius, and yeah, I think Agius was a little bit aggrieved on that one, but They both come into the pit, both Orland and Denz. I think that's going to be a big moment in this race, because that's really going to give an open opportunity for these guys. So Orland is in, Denzel Agius in, Chris Samet is in. It looks like Malia and Mifsud are staying here. So these are going to be a big moment in this race. Just before that 30-minute mark, I did call the 30-minute mark to be around about where the pit stops will come in, and that's exactly what is going on. Look at the percentage there for Chris Sammer. 1% of fuel left. Have you ever seen it here? Have you ever seen it here, James?
Yeah, very risky, that one indeed. But I'll tell you one, Denzel Agius, please, if you don't mind, Mr. Director, he has 18% of fuel when he came into the pit lane. That means he doesn't have to be in the pit box for as long as everyone else, and that is only going to benefit him. He only needs to put in now, it's about 15 minutes in for about half a tank of fuel, stick in 65-ish%, and you're probably going to be good. But Denzel Agius rather cover all bases. He leaves with 73% of fuel, and whilst everyone else around him is still still serving their pit stops. Is Denzel Agius going to be able to get out in front of everyone else, I wonder? He's not getting out. He's getting out in front of Orland, but he's also getting out in front of Chris Samet. So Denzel Agius is actually in a prime position versus everyone else. He leaves the pit lane at the top of La Source. He'll then join at the top of the Kemmel Straight, and this is now a critical part of Denzel Agius' race. He needs to be at the top of his game if he wants to gain massively from the fact that he still had lots of fuel in his car.
Indeed, and of course, look at that. He's kind of filtered it, so it's now to about, what is that, 75% of his fuel. So he's trying to go light. He's trying to go to the end, but I just question that strategy. Do you want it to go a little bit more, or with a little bit of kind of jeopardy in maybe filling it all the way up, and thinking about the weight of your car? So this is a really risky strategy. I think Orland and Sam have gone the safe route, but you know, he's run the numbers. Denzel kind of mathematically run the numbers in his head to think, yeah, this is just about going to get me to the end. Again, look at Mifsud there on 1% of fuel, Spiteri 2% of fuel, and the medium tires on for mainly the most of them. So I kind of wonder what Ayrton Birmingham and sorry, not Ayrton Birmingham, but Denzel Agius is going to go on for, because he is now kind of the target. He's now become the you know, the person you want to be ahead of. So I wonder if kind of anyone is going to replicate his kind of strategy, if anyone is aware of what they're doing, if anyone else has run the numbers. But James, we're in such a crucial part of this race. New tyres, big bowl of fuel about to go into these cars, and this is where the race will change, potentially on its head.
Mifsud, I think, is probably in a bit of an advantageous position because he managed to make soft tyres last longer than everyone else, as long as those on the medium. So if he's going onto the medium while everyone else is going onto a hard, because of course they can't use the same tyre compound, actually Mifsud might be in a prime position here. Here's Denzel Agius though. Everyone else is still serving their pit stops at the moment. You can see people with fuel coming in left, right and centre. The question is where are people going to be in terms of Denzel Agius, who's already up to P2? Is he going to come out in front of Malia? I don't think he will, but I tell you what, that is the testament to you looking after your fuel and then not having to serve a longer pit stop as a result. Denzel Agius is now in prime position. He's racing against Malia. Here we go.
Oh, this is going to be absolutely stupendous, but I just worry about those last 5 minutes. We do have 20 minutes till the end of this race, and this is going to be absolutely game-changing. Look at that, 3/10 of a 3/10 faster than anybody than we're seeing on the racetrack, and it really does seem to be game on. Spiteri down in 4th. We now find Mifsud in 5th, so Spiteri has got ahead of David Mifsud. These are big moments for this race, and look at the gap. The gap is coming down between him and Malia. Could this be a potential win here for Denzel Agius? He's got one before, but can Malia spoil the party and make it 3 for 3?
Confidence on the case of Denzel Agius. He's got warmer tyres. His tyres are all set up and ready to go. Malia has just left the pit lane. His tyres will still be warming up. He's going through Campus and Paul Ferrer. The gap falling now 1.8 seconds and will continue to fall. It's a purple second sector from Denzel Agius. The confidence still building and building for the Lexus. It's absolutely fabulous stuff from the Brit, who is finding so much confidence at the moment in the back of that Lexus. Brilliant stuff indeed. We're keeping an eye out as well on those behind. Clint Orland, Jonathan Spiteri, maybe even Mifsud, who will be wondering, why am I so low down in comparison? It's because Denzel Agius has done big brain time and a fabulous strategy from the Brit. Now the question is, will that car right there, he's on a softer compound versus everyone else, is Mifsud. Is he going to be able to find the traction? Is he going to find the motivation, the movement to get that car forward and potentially challenge for the podium again? That's the question. And of course, just in behind, Chris Samet, Falzon Del Bono, and also John Paul Vella. Don't discredit them as well. John Paul Vella did not have a good first stint. He's going to try and find and mitigate the damage from that one, and he's looking super sharp against the man of Joel Falzon Del Bono in the other Nissan GTR. Is he going to look for the move potentially going down to the straight? If we can go to P8, Mr. Director, can we see John Paul Vella potentially getting into the battle there with Falzon Del Bono? He doesn't get a good exit, to be fair, out at the top of El Rouge into Radion. He's going to get the toe, but he's also getting a toe from the car in front of him. But that McLaren looking so sharp as he's heading down the straight. He's going to have to go around the outside. He's going to get a toe. No, he's going to dive to the inside line. What a move this will be. Purple first sector, rather, for the McLaren. But is the move going to be done and dusted? It certainly will. John Paul Vella up to 7th.
Crucial move there from the Marlboro McLaren, because John Paul Vella needs these points. He had a very disappointing first stint, I think, in his books, and he'll want to bounce back by just getting any form of points on the board that he can. Anything he can get out of this race, he'll absolutely take and run. But there will be a bit of a sinking feeling in the stomach of John Paul Vella. He's going to try and chase down Christian Samet, who's been... well, the only thing I can really say is pretty quiet this race. So definitely need to keep an eye on that little tussle there. You can just see now heading and scrolling through the top end of the field. Spiteri there, 2 seconds behind Clint Orland in that Ferrari-themed Porsche. It's been a brilliant race for Orland. But Spiteri just kind of stood a little bit still, I'd say, compared to where he was, where his potential was sitting at one stage. And then, of course, we move on to that main battle of Denzel Agius and Daniel Malia, because that gap has closed down to 1.1 seconds, and I can feel the absolute grumble in your voice there, Jane, because you know how much this is splicing up, and this will be a big one. The fastest lap as well there for Denzel Agius, and it is a 1:18.153. This is absolutely superb. Now I do wonder, I want to throw this in before I move it over to you, James, is there going to be a little bit of fuel saving for Denzel? Just kind of do a little bit of lifting off, use the slipstream to also just move towards the rear as well of Malia, and just save that little bit of fuel to then be able to go for the full attack in the last couple of moments.
I don't think there will be, to be honest with you, because Clint Orland's actually got less fuel than Denzel Agius at the moment, would you believe, in 3rd place. So as it stands so far, Denzel Agius is actually in a really good position. Let's go just have a quick check on Daniel Malia's fuel. Now, of course, he'll have more fuel because he pitted a little bit later, but it's not that much, to be honest with you. So Denzel Agius absolutely has fueled his car to perfection, in my opinion. Will there be any fuel saving? I don't know. I don't think there will be, to be honest with you. I think he's absolutely nailed it. He's now under a second versus Daniel Malia here. And Denzel Agius, suddenly a serious dark horse in this particular race. And I tell you what a bounce back from what has been a relatively mediocre performance at Kyoto and a fantastic performance at Suzuka. If he gets this back, what an absolute race this will have been for Denzel Agius. We have got just a little bit under 13 minutes left in this race, and it's going to go all the way down to the wire.
Indeed it is, and it does seem like these guys are very much keeping themselves in contention. I think Malia does know what is on the line here, but he's also feel quite light as well. He, I think, was at about 70%, so I think just having a look between the two fuel kind of ranges, having a look at that, it's just under halfway distance there for Dens. What about Malia? If we can switch over to the Nissans, just so I can have a look at the kind of the fuel for him. Yeah, that's just halfway, so it looks like Denz is a little bit lighter in terms of fuel and is starting to gain, so it now starts to see that gap come under 0.8 of a second.
Boah. Answers on a postcard, folks. Let us know who you think your favourite is for this particular victory. You got to say Denzel Agius is definitely the dark horse in this one. Best lap so far, personal best so far from Daniel Malia. So he's starting to respond now to the attack from Denzel Agius in 2nd place. We still have that little battle happening as well for P3. Clint Orland still leading the way, but Jonathan Spiteri ever getting closer. Gap now about 1.4 between the Porsche 911 and the McLaren. So keep an eye out on that little battle because that will be the final spot on the podium, because some reason, I don't know whether he's gone for a harder compound at the moment. I must have missed it if that's the case. But David Misford down in P5 has fallen completely by the wayside and is actually under a little bit of pressure from Chris Sammet at the moment. And actually that Mercedes, more known for its power, a little bit of a corner cut maybe at the top of Eau Rouge, I'm not sure. They've got away with it though from the game. But Chris Sammet getting closer and closer and closer for this battle. This is for P5 in the standings, and of course that is 12 points in the championship. Potts defends it down the inside line, but Chris Sammet goes around the outside. They collide ever so slightly on that front right corner, but Potsy still stays in front.
Indeed, and that was a big old tussle there for that 5th place spot, and for sure it's not over, because John Paul Vella wants to go after that little tussle after his unfortunate demise in these early stages. But yeah, we still had our 10 runners from what we had at the beginning of this race, our 10 entries continuing in this race. Nobody deciding to quit out of this one, and for sure they will all be getting points. It's down to the top 12, so even with Ayrton Birmingham's horrible result, I think he will still end up with 4 points. Well, actually, he's having a look at 6 points if he can get past Owen Kassar on this one. So the BMW still not quite out of last place here, but yeah, any points he can get, it will still be something to carry on for the remaining 5 rounds of the championship. He darts to the outside through the Piff Paff chicane.
Yeah, he's been absolutely pushed around the corner. Oh, they're losing the rear as well on that Toyota Supra. Not looking confident at all at the moment is Owen Kassar. We're going to go back to this battle with Denz, though, because Denz is getting closer and closer. Gap now just a little bit over half a second in favour of that Nissan GTR GT3, though the Lexus is getting closer and closer. And again, the consistent lap times coming in. He was within 0.003 of a second between the last couple of laps was Denzel Agius, so looking particularly confident now in that Lexus, and Malia is looking behind him and thinking, oh, there is a serious charge now from this man, of course, Denzel Agius, who was looking to be really in the mix there. Of course, remember winning the championship out last time out in season 2, so he wants to reclaim his crown. And I tell you what an effort he's showing this season. A great result at Suzuka. Looks like it's going to be, whatever happens, a great result here in Belgium as well. Only going to help benefit the reclamation of the Asphalt King's crown as he sets another purple sector. He is flying.
He is indeed, and he's just trying to burn all that fuel, but I think tyres will kind of be the main kind of warning in this one, because he needs to try and potentially get past Daniel Malia, but how late do you want to leave it? That is the big question in this one, because of course we are into that final 8.5 minutes. Do you want to be doing it now, or do you want to make it a last lap surprise to kind of entertain the viewers a bit? But of course he will not be thinking about the viewers. The viewers will be the last thing he thinks about. He'll be thinking about this result on track. When do I make my move, and where do I make my move?
Yes, that's the critical thing, isn't it? What is he thinking about it? Because he's got just a little bit over 8 minutes left in this race before the checkered flag is waving, and of course there's no +1 lap malarkey over here in this championship. As soon as the checkered flag is out, you're on your final lap. So Daniel Malia is trying his hardest to now start putting a little bit of a gap versus Denzel Agius, and you know what, on this lap he has done so. He's put a couple of tenths on Denzel Agius here, so is Denzel Agius now just easing off a little bit, getting himself ready, charging the energy back within himself to start attacking once again, I wonder. We'll see though, because the move is nowhere near going to be on at the bus stop chicane when the gap is around about 3/4 of a second. He's in fact actually mounting the curb going through turn 18, coming out of turn 19, and the power down towards the line, and he is a little bit down actually on his last lap. He's lost about 0.3 of a second versus his previous lap, so just edging his way closer and closer to a battle with Malia, but not looking for it just yet.
Indeed, we'll have to really see how it all comes around here, because we're now entering those last 7 minutes where it starts to get quite critical. Remember, the fastest lap of this race is a 2:17.6, so really keep an eye when it says the 37-minute mark, because yeah, that would be a good indication if we're going on to our final lap, or what kind of place we're at. Slipstream there for Denzelagius. No form of lift and coast here. Half a second, I should say,
Oh, wow.
compared to the rest of the pack here. He's having a look now to the inside line here. That's going to be a bold move, but in towards Malmedy. Just decides not to make that move. All he's doing really is putting Malia under a lot more pressure here, but he's got to be specific with this move. James Otter, how would you play this being Denzelagius? You know your tyres are starting to go. You know your fuel is in the perfect range. How do you play this?
Got a little bit excited, I think, did Denzelagius, saw the move there, and perhaps the gap was never really going to be there at the end of the corner, so he's lost a bucket of time to Malia as a result of that one. Spiteri, though, now up to third place. Clint Orland really starting to struggle a little bit now, and I'm trying to figure out where he's struggling. I think it is fuel again, you know. Let's just see compared to Jonathan Spiteri, if you don't mind, please, Mr. Director. Oh, yeah, it's a country mile, so Orland, and this is a consistent thing that we've seen with Clint Orland in the first stint as well. He uses too much fuel. He's not really committing to the lift and coasting early enough, and as a result, he's burning so much more fuel, and he's now having to consider it later down the line. Podium out of the question now as a result. So Jonathan Spiteri will now begin his push. He's got so much more fuel. He's got more tyres as well versus the 911. So he's now just going to have to reconcile that third place position, but one hell of a reconciliation from a man who at one point was falling the wayside down as far as 5th and 6th place. But in the battle, he's prevailed, and he's now in third.
That is going to be a big moment there for Jonathan Spiteri. After a very, very difficult race, I think he's kind of found a little bit of rhythm. Now we have a look to kind of where that battle is in terms of the race lead, because Denzelagius now sits 9.5 tenths behind Daniel Malia. So has he killed the tyres a little bit too much, or will this just be a massive momentum push here? Because that Nissan is starting to get a little bit out of range from the Lexus. He's doing everything he can, but the front right is just looking a little bit more deathifying. Unfortunately, due to the sponsors, we love you so much, we love the sponsors, but we just cannot see that front left because it is starting to get a little bit red, I believe, bearing in mind it is a clockwise circuit. Many clockwise circuits around there, but yeah, we just cannot see the tyre that is being used the most around the circuit. He's only closed it up by 1/10 as well, so it will be one of those kind of moments where it just starts to get a little bit tough for the Lexus as the temperature now starts to cool down a little bit. You see it's got a little bit overcast. That means the temperature is starting to die down just that little bit here. So yeah, keep an eye on that sort of weather, and of course that now kind of means that these tyres are able to be a little bit more pushed, and especially going into these last few moments, 3.5 minutes, they can be pushed to the max pretty much.
Yeah, I'm going to make a bold claim here as well. It's darkening very quickly here. Now, it could be overcast conditions. There'd be nothing to worry about. But the rain is very much possible at this particular circuit. We all know it's very much possible. And I mean, any weather condition, to be honest with you, is more known. There's the blue sky above going through Campus and Paul Frere. But there is some serious darkening clouds occurring, especially around Malmedy and Bruxelles. So if the rain is going to come, it's going to probably come in the first sector. So first to second sectors, so keep an eye out on that one, because if it does come, it's going to be very late into the day, and those who have looked after their tyres the most are going to be in the benefit if that occurs. So we are now approaching the 21st lap of this race, and that will, if the math works out in my head, will not be the final lap. It'll be the penultimate lap of this race. So the questions on the cards here: has Denzelagius managed to find the rhythm again to try and potentially put attack against Malia? He certainly has. The gap now falling now below 1 second again, around about 3/4 of a second.
Indeed, and we'll have to really see if that kind of comes about here, because he's got some great pace on him, but he just needs to improve that little bit extra. I do think that he's got a great zone in terms of where he sits for the moment, but Denz is just having to haul that Lexus up to rear the Nissan. If he could do another lap exactly like he did now, I think he's going to be on that bumper of the Nissan GTR very soon. Maybe about what are you thinking? 2 minutes time. Yeah, I've called it there. Going on to that last lap is where we'll potentially see these guys really push on here. We see there now Malia to continue to go on. Great stuff there by Jonathan Spiteri. That was, can we just go back to kind of the James, can we just talk about that kind of first couple of laps? It was so difficult for Jonathan Spiteri, and now look at where he is now. He's really pushed on and managed to come back from a very difficult place.
Yeah, those clouds getting really dark over Malmo the Bruxelles now as well. But yeah, you're absolutely right. He was really struggling, wasn't he, Jonathan Spiteri, at the beginning of this race, losing a bucket load of positions, and he's really just bounced back so well. This is the battle that we're keeping an eye out on, though. It's for the lead of this race. Daniel Malia getting up close and personal Denzel Adjus rather getting up close and personal with the fact of Daniel Malia. Look at the clouds really starting to build now. I mean, yeah, if it stays overcast, sure, but if the rain starts to fall, that is not going to be of benefit. I tell you what, the track is also not looking particularly happy either. It looks a little bit green to me, so that could be potentially something to consider as well. So we'll keep an eye out on that one. The clock is now ticking to 49 minutes and 10 seconds. We will get the final lap of this race when they come across that start finishing line. And answers on a postcard, folks, of who you think the favourite is. I'll tell you what, though, that this last lap, this penultimate lap, has been fabulous from Malia. He's now managed to stretch out his lead from 3/4 of a second to just under 1 second now as they go into the bus stop chicane. Is Denzel Adjus's run completely over, or has he got a little bit left in the trunk on this final lap?
I'm not sure if he's going to have this here. He made a mistake coming out of campus and now found himself, excuse me, I do apologise, but yeah, he found himself really struggling out of that up the hill here. I think he lost about 3 to 4 tenths of a second, which now sees him back to the 9/10 we saw 2 laps ago. Going on to this last lap, that's the 50-minute mark completed. It will be Potsy in P6, Sam at P7, De Bono will be P8. It will be Ayrton Birmingham, I believe, in P9 as well. Nope, that seems to be Owen Kassar, who will finish ahead of Ayrton Birmingham. So they are all locked in place. There will be kind of the lead to play for here. And if the rain does hit now here, James, I think it's all down to Daniel Malia to just tippy-toe his way to the all the way to the finish. I actually had a kind of a moment similar where I think it was raining, and then it was dry, and then it started raining on the final lap in an iRacing race around Road America, and the leader just crawled almost to almost crawled over the line to the point where they were going for a drag race towards the timing line. In fact, it was a dead heat on this one, but this one looks far from a dead heat here.
It's looking particularly spicy, though. I tell you what, with those track conditions looking like they are actually deteriorating, the marbles on the circuit becoming more and more prominent from the shadow being emitted from that dense cloud, which is now forming actually above Paul Frere and campus. But nonetheless, it's not affected the racing whatsoever. They've managed to hold the gap anywhere between 3/4 of a second and 1 second. But in the end, Malia has just been able to control this race with absolute precision. He's had no issues whatsoever, despite the absolute cracking strategy from the Season 2 champion last time out in Denzel Adjus. But nonetheless, what this result means is we are now going to have 3 completely different winners in as many races in this particular championship. The Asphalt King Spa crown goes to Daniel Malia in the end, who takes the top step from Denzel Adjus with a fabulous P2 finish. Jonathan Spiteri, the winner from the last race in Kyoto, will take 3rd place, and the final results are as follows. There it is, Malia finishing just under 7/10 of a second in front of Denzel Adjus. From Jonathan Spiteri, who will get a cracking result for P3. Clint Orland will be happy to finish in P4 in the end, actually, from John Paul Vella, who fell down the standings in the end from the first stint, but will be happy to finish in the top 5.
Indeed, a superb round from our top 5 drivers, with of course David Mifsud finishing home in 6th, Christian Samet there finishing home in 8th, Joel Falzon De Bono after this in P8. Then we've got, as I say, Owen Kassar in P9 and Ayrton Birmingham rounding out the top 10, and that rounds off and caps off round 3 of the championship here in the Asphalt Kings series. And Wow, James, we had an absolute superb run in there in Spa-Francorchamps, and I think that's a classic Spa race for you.
Classic Spa race. I think Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps always tends to bring the best and the worst in people. And speaking of which, unfortunately, the championship winner last time out and defending champion Ayrton Birmingham, he's having an absolute stinker this season, and then having an absolute stinker of a race, finishing last place. He does get the 3 points that are associated with 10th place, but you know, it's not a fabulous result in the end from the man in the pink BMW. Will he be able to bounce back, though, next week? Because, of course, we are taking a trip over to France next time out next week. When we take a look at the calendar, you can see the Circuit de Sainte-Croix in France will be on the 7th of the 8th next week. And then we'll be taking a short break before we take a trip over to the Styrian Alps in Red Bull Ring, Austria, the Deep Forest Raceway in Switzerland before we take a trip to the Nürburgring, and then, of course, the Daytona International Speedway to round out the championship over in the United States of America. It will be a very interesting race ahead of us at the Circuit de Sainte-Croix. Will Ayrton Birmingham be able to bounce back from this one, Adam? Because I tell you what, he is really struggling out there.
He does seem to be, and just having a look at my results over here, he did get that podium at Suzuka, but it just seems like it just hasn't gone his way. Maybe, yeah, there seems to be a little bit of a theme. Am I the curse? Am I the problem here? Because every single time I've been here, he hasn't got any points over double figures. And that really disappoints me because we know how fast Ayrton Birmingham is. He's really been a great championship challenger, but when things just aren't quite going his way, drivers like that will struggle. You know, there's some drivers that will be able to bounce back from moments like this, but there will be some drivers that cannot seem to be able to get out of a bad run of form, and when they do, it's kind of game over before the time they get round to it. So I do hope that the form will pick up for Ayrton Birmingham going into St. Croix, but I do think that he'll have to do it steadily, race by race as well, because that's not something that is easily fixable overnight.
It's going to be critical, isn't it, now for the Asphalt King himself, who looks like the crown is now starting to fall off his head. But the question is who is it falling in favour of? With 3 different race winners, the championship is still very much wide open. As said, we're taking a trip to France next week at the Circuit de Sainte-Croix. I won't be here next week. I'm on holiday, so it will be Adam Reed alongside either himself and someone else. I don't know. We'll see next week. But one thing is for certain, no doubt, I'll be watching, and hopefully you will too. We'll see you next time here from the Velocity Esports Racing community, bringing you the Asphalt Kings with Hyundai, Intercomp, Monster Energy, Brand Garage, Level Academy, and the Specialist will be here. Hopefully you will too. Take care. Bye-bye for now.